On our trig values mastery quiz, we need to be able to do any of the 6 trig functions at any angle. In physics, we use degrees, but in calculus, we'll always, and any higher level math, we'll always use radians. So we'll be working with radians in this video. I think of this as 3 distinct skills. The first skill is knowing where angles are. So this comes from the circumference of a circle, and the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. So for the unit circle, when the radius is 1, the circumference is 2 pi. So radians are just a measure of how far around the circle you've gone. Okay, so here are some important angles. 0 starts right here. You might think 0 would start like here or something, but it doesn't. Going all the way around the circle, we get to 2 pi. And that's really all you really need to know to get the rest of the things if you're just a little smart about it. Halfway around the circle is pi, because it's 2 pi divided by 2. Halfway around that is pi over 2. Halfway between pi over 2 and 0 is pi over 4. And then there are 2 other important angles. Pi over 6, so this is pi over 2 divided by 3. 2 times 3 is 6. We broke it into 6 total parts. And pi over 3, which is what we get if we break pi up into 3 parts. So this is pi over 3. So, and they go from smaller to bigger, right? 0 is smaller than pi over 6, smaller than pi over 4, is smaller than pi over 3, is smaller than pi over 2. These first quadrant angles are important. We also need to be able to find, hey, what's like the equivalent thing over here? Well, you know, this one is going to be an extra pi over 6 in addition to pi. So pi plus pi over 6. This is 6 pi over 6 plus pi over 6, which is 7 pi over 6. I do not expect in calculus you have a ton of things memorized. You should have these angles memorized. You should be able to get the rest of the angles, but it's okay if it takes you a few seconds to get what those angles are. Like, I don't expect you to memorize that this is 3 pi over 2, but this is pi, and if you add an extra pi over 2, it's pi plus pi over 2. Well, that's 2 pi over 2 plus pi over 2. That's 3 pi over 2. There's too much memorization for you to have it all memorized, but you should be able to get to any of these angles. All right, so that's the first skill, is knowing how to find different angles. The second skill is knowing the sine values and the cosine values at those angles. So sine of 0, sine values are always the y values and in the unit circle. And this is because sine of x is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And if we actually make a little triangle here, what's going on is the opposite is the y value, and the hypotenuse is the radius of the circle, which is 1. So we end up getting the y value divided by 1, which is the y value. And so you can just think of it as the y values. So the y value at 0 is 0. The y value at pi over 2 is, I'm going to write this kind of weird. This is square root of 4 over 2, which is 2 over 2, which is 1, which is the obvious answer. Okay? And the reason I've written it like this is because the rest of them follow an easy pattern. This is the square root of 1 over 2, which is 1/2. This is right here, pi over 4. This is the square root of 2 over 2, which can't be simplified. And this one is the square root of 3 over 2, which cannot be simplified. And so you'll notice it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is pretty easy to remember. So the y values go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, with you doing the square root of the top divided by 2. All right. The cosine values, at 0, the cosine value is 1. At pi over 6, this is it goes the other direction, square root of 3 over 2. This is square root of 2 over 2, square root of 1 over 2, which is 1/2, and 0. And, you know, we should be able to see that this is 0 because the x, this is, oh, sorry, I should have written here, I apologize. This is the x value. And we see that the x value, the distance away from left to right, from the origin to here, is 1, because that's the unit circle. The distance to the left or right from here is 0. That's the x-coordinate. And we should be able to get any angle. For instance, here, if we want to do, I want to know this angle. This is going to be, let's see, we've got a pi plus pi over 2, which is 3 pi over 2. 3 pi over 2 plus this angle is halfway, so it must be a pi over 4. And we can use our, man, you guys couldn't see that, I apologize. This is 3 pi over 2 around plus an extra pi over 4. And this is, we can use our fraction skills to find what this is. This is 6 pi over 4 plus pi over 4, which is 7 pi over 4. So we can do things like sine of 7 pi over 4. And what we're going to do is we're going to think, well, this is the corresponding angle to pi over 4 in the first quadrant. And sine of pi over 4 is the middle one, square root of 2 over 2. I think of it as little, middle, big, with 0 and 1 on the outside. This is the middle one, so square root of 2 over 2, except it's down. And we know y values when they're below the x-axis are negative, so this is negative square root of 2 over 2. We could do a thing like cosine of 5 pi over 6 by thinking about where 5 pi over 6 is. Well, it's a little bit less than pi. In fact, it's pi, which is 6 pi over 6, minus pi over 6. So it's pi over 6 up from this. That's the little one up from here. And so if we do cosine of 5 pi over 6, we want to know what is this x value. And because this is the wide one, it's the one that's far away, it's square root of 3 over 2, but it's the left, so it's negative. So in calculus, we're not really looking, oh man, you guys, I have done a terrible job of keeping this in camera. Cosine of 5 pi over 6 is pi over 6 up from pi. So I just subtracted this to get 5 pi over 6. And so this is where 5 pi over 6 is. There's one more skill, which is knowing these basic identities. Tangent is sine over cosine. Cotangent is cosine over sine. Secant is 1 over cosine, and cosecant is 1 over sine. I'm really annoyed that the S1 goes with the C1, and the C1 goes with the S1. I wish cosecant were cosine and secant were sine, but I did not come up with the names of these. They do mean what they mean. They are kind of backwards from what you would think. And so we can do things like tangent of pi, let's do 2 pi over 3. We can do this by thinking about where it is on the circle. 2 pi over 3 is less than pi. So here's where pi is. It's less than that, and it's one of the over 3 ones, so it's going to be right here. So this is, the reason I know this is it's pi over 3 away from being at pi. So this is this guy. So tangent, the way I do it is instead of memorizing the tangent values, I just do sine of 2 pi over 3 divided by cosine of 2 pi over 3. Sine of 2 pi over 3, well, we're at the big y value one there. So it's square root of 3 over 2 divided by, it's the little, the big y value goes with the little x value. And so that's 1/2 square root of 1 over 2. And we can multiply by the reciprocal. So this is square root of 3. Okay. Let's look at what you should be able to do on this mastery quiz. I would strongly recommend against trying to have your unit circle memorized and instead just know how to do it at each value. But if you memorize your unit circle, that's a way to get around it as well. If you have every value memorized around the unit circle, there's some easy patterns, and that's a great way to do it also. So for me, when I see something like this, cotangent, this is cosine of negative 5 pi over 4 over sine of negative 5 pi over 4. I have to figure out where this angle is. So here's 0. 5 pi over 4 is pi plus pi over 4, and all of it's in the negative direction because this is 4 pi over 4 plus pi over 4. That's 5 pi over 4. So we go to pi in the negative direction. We're actually going this direction because that's negative. So negative pi, and then an extra pi over 4 Pi over 4 is the middle one. And so we're right here. This is negative 5 pi over 4. And this is the middle one. So cosine of this is going to be the middle one, square root of 2 over 2, but it's negative. The sine value is the middle one also, so square root of 2 over 2. So it's positive because it's up. The y value is up. The x value is to the left. And so we end up getting the same thing divided by the same thing. This will be negative 1. Let's do one more example. Let's do an easier one, or a harder one. Cosecant of 7 pi over 4. Let's do a non-pi over 4 one. Cosecant of negative 5 pi over 3. Let's first figure out where our angle is. Our angle is at negative 5 pi over 3. So it's, here's 0, here's pi. 5 pi over 3 is pi, which is 3 pi over 3, plus an extra 2 pi over 3. So let's see, we are at, here's pi, and then we have to go an extra 2 pi over 3. Well, here's pi over 3, and then an extra pi over 3 gets us to here. This is negative 5 pi over 3 right here. There are other ways to do this. We could have added 2 pi onto this to find the positive value. There's a bunch of ways. I don't actually care how you do it. So this is the same as pi over 3. So this is cosecant, which is 1 divided by sine of pi over 3. Pi over 3 is the big one for sine because it's more up than it is over. And so it's 1 divided by square root of 3 over 2, which is, when you divide, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And then usually we don't leave square roots in the denominator. We multiply by square root of 3 over square root of 3. And so you get 2 square root of 3 over 3. In calculus, you do not have to be as fast at these as you have to be in precalculus. In precalculus, you want to be fast. You're going to be doing these all the time. In calculus, you end up doing like one of these problems on a homework or 3 problems once in class. And so having the whole unit circle, having a whole bunch of things memorized probably isn't worth it. But being able to come up with it is definitely important. You have to be able to evaluate these angles. If you have more questions about this, feel free to do it. Also, feel free not to do it this way. If you have a method you like from Ms. Christofferson's class, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way.